The skies over Europe in 1943 were not blue. They were black, filled with smoke, fire, and the long shadows of falling aircraft. Every mission over Nazi-occupied Europe was a gamble. For every 100 bombers that left England at dawn, a quarter never returned. They were hit by flak, torn apart by Messerschmitts, or brought down by something even more terrifying, mechanical failure. In those days, survival didn't just depend on the pilot's skill, it depended on the hands of men no one ever saw, the ground crews. While the world celebrated aces and heroes, these nameless mechanics worked through the night, in mud, frost, and darkness, keeping the flying fortresses alive. One of them, a quiet American mechanic stationed at RAF Bassingbourn, made a discovery so small, so ordinary, that his superiors almost laughed it off. A single bolt, dismissed as useless, but that tiny piece of steel would go on to save hundreds of lives, and change the course of the air war. This is the story of the bolt that refused to be ignored. The Boeing B-17 Flying Fortress was more than just a plane. It was America's message to Hitler. We will reach you, no matter the cost. With 4 engines and thick armor, it could carry 6,000 pounds of bombs and still limp home on 3 engines, sometimes even 2. But beneath its strength was a flaw, one that terrified the crews. The fuel lines and engine mounts were prone to vibration failure. When the engines ran at high RPM during long flights, bolts on the mounting frame could shear off. 1 broken bolt meant a trembling engine. 2 broken bolts meant a fire, and at 25,000 feet, fire meant death. For months, bomber groups reported mysterious engine failures. Planes returning with engines hanging loose, sometimes with entire mounts ripped from the nacelle. Engineers blamed fatigue, cold weather, bad parts, anything. But no one had time to stop the bombing campaign to find out. The war had no patience for details. Then came Sergeant William Bill Hartman, a 27-year-old maintenance mechanic from Kansas. He wasn't an engineer or an officer, just a man who knew machines better than people. Every night he worked the same row of fortresses. Every morning he watched the same aircraft limp home, engines smoking, mounts cracked, and one night he noticed something. The bolts used on the engine E's lower mount, simple half-inch steel fasteners, showed hairline cracks where no stress should have been. He replaced them. The next day, same cracks. He reported it. The reply came, "Their standard issue. Keep them tight and move on." But Bill couldn't let it go. He disassembled an entire mount on a damaged B-17. When he looked closely, he saw the truth. The bolts weren't the problem. It was the lock washer beneath them. The washers were made of hardened steel, too brittle. Under vibration, they cracked microscopically, loosening the bolt just enough to start a chain reaction. To the brass, it was nothing. To Bill, it was a death sentence waiting to happen. So he decided to fix it himself. He scavenged a box of spare bolts, rejects, worn, and mismatched. Among them was a shorter, thicker bolt with a dull, rounded head. The label read, "Non-standard, useless." But when Bill compared it to the standard mount bolt, he noticed something. The useless one was heavier, forged from a different steel blend, slightly elastic, not brittle. He replaced all 4 mount bolts on one bomber, the Memphis Belle EC's sister ship, and left a note for the flight crew. "Try her today. Tell me how she feels." That day, the crew flew through hell. Anti-aircraft flak, freezing winds, near misses from enemy fire. When they returned, every other plane needed work. But that one, its engines purred like new. No cracks, no shears. The fix worked. Cut to Bill showing the bolts to his commanding officer. But when he reported it, his officer dismissed the discovery. "You used unauthorized parts, Sergeant. Stick to regulations." Bill replied quietly, "Sir, regulations don't fly the plane." He was reprimanded, but word spread through the hangars. One by one, mechanics began copying the modification. They replaced brittle bolts with the useless kind. Within a month, engine mount failures dropped across the entire 91st Bomb Group. The Air Force later standardized the change, and the useless bolt became part of every new B-17 rolling off the line. Bill never received a medal, no recognition, just the quiet satisfaction that fewer bombers were crashing. But his discovery, one tiny bolt overlooked by everyone, saved hundreds of airmen from burning alive over Europe. Fade to montage, bombers flying in formation, flak bursts in the distance, narration overlays the rhythmic hum of engines. The war in the air was a war of attrition. Every bomber that made it home meant 10 men still breathing. The modified bolts, along with reinforced engine frames and improved fuel line clamps, significantly reduced catastrophic failures. By late 1944, the 8th Air Force reported a 20% drop in in-flight mechanical losses. That meant hundreds of bombers returning that otherwise wouldn't. Each of those bombers carried 10 men. Each man carried a story, a letter to his wife, a photo of his child, a reason to come home. And all of it owed something to a nameless mechanic who refused to ignore a tiny flaw. They were the silent army beneath the wings, the ones who never fired a shot, but whose hands turned bolts, patched holes, and whispered to machines. They fought their war in grease and cold steel, and their victories were measured not in medals, but in planes that landed safely on the runway. Today, few remember Sergeant Bill Hartman, or the useless bolt that saved so many. But his story lives quietly inside every surviving B-17. The same reinforced engine mounts, his idea, are still there, still holding strong after 80 years. When asked why he did it, he once said in an interview, "A bolt's a small thing, but up there, small things matter." And he was right. Because in war, survival often depends on details no one sees. The hidden parts, the unglamorous labor, the silent corrections made in the dark. The useless bolt became a symbol of human persistence, of quiet defiance, of the belief that even the smallest act of care can save countless lives. In the story of war, we often remember the heroes who flew, but we should also remember those who kept them flying, the hands that held the wrenches, the eyes that noticed what others missed, and the bolt, once called useless, that held together the wings of hope.